watching The Tom Renz Show with your host, Tom Renz.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Happy Wednesday to y'all. I'm glad to be here tonight, and kind of, to be honest, I'm a little bit torn up on this. I'm looking at some stuff tonight, and I'm seeing a whole bunch of things go in the wrong direction. And, frankly, it's more than a little bit frustrating. One of the things that I'm seeing that's really particularly bad right now is the issues we're having with privacy. We are moving closer and closer to a digital prison. And to be honest with you guys, it's becoming concerning. Now, I expect, and I'm hearing word that a lot of good things are going to be happening before the election, and possibly some really good news on accountability, which to me is wonderful. The accountability issue is one of the most profound things that we have to deal with. But, if we allow ourselves to fall into this digital prison where everything is tracked and traced, it sets us up for a situation that we can't get out of. We have got to be aware of and careful with this digital prison and the total destruction of our Fourth Amendment rights. I'm very, very concerned. I want to spend some time on it. There's a bunch of other things going on. Lindell, congratulations to Lindell. The parties dismissed their lawsuit. They agreed to dismiss. So Dominion is no longer suing Lindell for defamation for God knows how much money. I can't say the case was looking real good, but it wasn't going the way it should. So I'll get into that a little bit later. This closed door meeting that Trump had going on with the U.S. senators, this does not sound like it was going all that smoothly. So I'll be a lot to talk about tonight, an awful lot to talk about. Before I do, I'm going to get into it. But before I do, please, we need your support. GiveSendGo.com/Renslaw. GiveSendGo.com/Renslaw. Your support keeps us going. Your support keeps us living, keeps us alive, keeps us telling the truth. Anything you can give, we're grateful for. And we're grateful for all the people that have continued to support us for a very long time. We're going to keep pushing the truth and keep trying to get the truth out there. But we can only really do it with your help. So please, GiveSendGo.com/Renslaw. Also go to TomRenz.com, www.TomRenz.com. Click out our shop, check out our partners and affiliates. And, of course, always check out our people like Global Healing, globalhealing.com/Tom Renz for discounts, men's hormone support. I always have my men's hormone support. I keep going through new bottles. I just got my latest shipment, and they're changing up the label. Look at it, the new label. Here's the new label. It's kind of shiny and silvery. Just some new fonts on there. I like it. So men's hormone support. And then scroll down. Don't forget Hale & Associates. Everybody needs a fiduciary on their side to help navigate the economy, and the economy is a bit of a mess. So make sure you're checking out Hale & Associates. And scroll down today. We want to really, really push our friends at Cardio Miracle. And you have to scroll down. All these guys are great. All these guys you get discounts on. Check out our discount codes for any of these guys. But scroll down to Cardio Miracle, cardiomiracle.com/Tom Renz, cardiomiracle.com/Tom Renz. All natural. It provides your body all that you need to protect your heart in many, many cases. It's a wonderful supplement, one of my favorites. And one of the things that it has is it promotes your body's ability to naturally produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, it's a vasodilator. It really helps your blood flow. It helps with all sorts of things. And by the way, nitric oxide is actually the active ingredient in the little blue pill. So I ain't going to say it's going to help with that, but, it might help with that. It's a great supplement, wonderful, wonderful thing. And check out Cardio Miracle. You'll feel better. I drink Cardio Miracle probably usually 2 times a day, sometimes 1. It's a great, great supplement for anyone. Start on it young, stay on it till you're old. It'll keep your heart healthy. It's a wonderful thing. I love Cardio Miracle, cardiomiracle.com/Tom Renz for discounts. And make sure you're checking them out. All right, let's get to privacy. This post that I saw today was what set me off on this. And I looked it up, and it is very, very accurate. Ben, can we show this post that I got here by Scott Basler? So Scott Basler posted today that the FCC wants to kill burner phones by forcing telecoms to verify every customer's government ID. Now, he talks about this, but let me explain what's going on here, and let me explain why this is so important. What we're seeing is anybody that gets on the internet most people are getting on through phones, through the 5G network, soon to be the 6G network, through their tablets, all these things that have wireless connectivity. To get on the internet, in many, many cases, you have to sign in through something where your ID is verified. If you sign on at home, your ID is going to be verified because you're a customer with, say, Spectrum or whoever. Your routers, everything is made so that with tracking and tracing embedded. It's almost impossible to get around it, to be honest with you. There are certain machines you can buy. There's certain network equipment you can buy, but it's very specialized, and it's hard to get, and it's hard to set up, and it's complicated. And essentially almost nobody's doing it. And they're trying to close these loopholes. One of the places that it's been very hard to track and trace people is on their phones, especially with the burner phones and things like that. So the government is pushing more and more to make sure that they can verify your ID. Now, all of this starts with the Real ID Act, which I've talked about extensively, and I'm going to hit on in a minute. But let me explain what they're doing. Okay, so here's the FCC. We're going to show you a bunch of different things. The Consumer Policy Division, right? So they're looking at doing some stuff, and what they're talking about is robocalls. Everybody hates robocalls, and this is what we keep seeing over and over again. The government says it's trying to keep you safe. Trying to keep you safe from terrorists, trying to keep you safe from robocalls, trying to keep you safe from everything. And to keep you safe, they say, well, we got to know who you are and what you're doing. So they keep eroding our privacy. They keep taking it away. You've got the flock cameras everywhere, right? So they're tracking you in public. They're tracking where you're driving, taking pictures of your license plate, and they're paying off these local communities. Hey, we'll give you a bunch of money so we can install our flock cams. And this is happening everywhere, but it's particularly happening on where we need to connect to the internet. If you're not verified, they don't want you connected to the internet. They want to be able to track and trace everything you do. Now, this, of course, ties into Palantir and their takeover of the government. Palantir's come in, and Palantir was very open. I mean, they were part of the CIA's Total Information Awareness Program. That program got shelved because it was so wildly unpopular. And then from there, they kind of went quiet for a number of years. Now, as the Trump administration came in, they get along real well with Palantir. And so they're using Palantir to automate and to include AI throughout the government. The reality is, though, is that everything that they're doing is opening so that this AI can track and trace everything you're doing. Your medical records, your tax records, everything is being consolidated so that the government can look at everything you're doing. And they're doing this in a very creative way, right? So the government can't track your conversations over the phone, but when you click I agree with Verizon or AT&T or whoever, you're agreeing to them monitoring any sort of data that you're running over their network. And so they do. They then sell that data. They sell it all over the place, and they sell it in various ways. This allows for a workaround for a lot of Fourth Amendment issues. Now, the workaround can't be very straightforward because the Fourth Amendment still counts. So what they're doing is they keep outsourcing, where you have to give more and more privacy rights to these various companies to access the internet, to be a part of commerce. And they want to be able to track and trace everything you're doing, because good luck getting by today without access to the internet. Now, the government claims that we have to keep you safe from fraud by monitoring everything that goes on in the internet. They have to keep you safe from robocalls. They want to make sure that you can see who's calling. So they're going to have voter ID verification, so you know if it's a robocall, right? And they keep moving in this way. Well, this policy that the FCC is now pushing, they're claiming is about robocalls, but it's really not, right? So let me show you what they're doing. This is a public notice by the FCC. Ben, let me show this and then one more here. This public notice is from the Governmental Affairs Bureau, and they're asking for notice and comment rulemaking, right? And the rulemaking they're seeking comment on is related to these robocalls, right? And how they're going to require ID verification. Now, that may not be immediately apparent unless you dig far enough. Then you see this document. This is the proposed rulemaking. Okay, so this is their notice of proposed rulemaking, and it's extensive. We're not going to go through line by line because it took me a while to get through this, right? But basically, let me explain what's going on here. Right now, they're pushing to have originating voice service providers. They want them to take affirmative, effective measures to prevent new and renewing customers from using their networks for illegal calls, right? That's where they are right now. They want to really kind of expand this, and they want to make sure that everybody on the networks, anybody that's making any calls, is verified. How do they want to do that? Well, the proposed rule would require name, physical address, and government-issued identification number and an alternate phone number to be able to get a phone or to be able to communicate over these networks. Well, what is that government-issued ID? Well, as you know, our government is pushing for real ID in all things. If you want to get on an airplane, you either have to get a real ID, carry a passport, or do something else. Now, by the way, your passport is tracked too. If you've got a passport, they've already got all your data. So the people tell me, well, I'm not going to get a real ID. I'm going to use my passport. It doesn't matter. If you get a passport, they already have all your data. I've got a passport. They've already got all my data. So there's nothing I can really do about that. But now they're making it very hard. So, for example, as an attorney, this is really outrageous. As an attorney, I cannot file for a trademark without giving them my real ID. I have to provide these sorts of government-issued identifications to file for a trademark. I can't actually do part of my job as an attorney that I'm legally allowed to do and licensed to do unless I give them my real ID. The government is doing this, and they're pushing so that everything you want to do, you have to have this real ID so that they can track and trace you, right? And so they're pushing this. Now, they're pushing even harder for businesses. Businesses have to do all sorts of different things. They have to show intended use of service, customer's IP address, employer identification numbers, proof of good standing, verification of commercial presence, et cetera, et cetera. And while I would be thrilled to death for robocalls to go away entirely, that's wonderful. I'm thrilled about that. Not at the expense of my privacy. Not this way. There's a lot of ways to do it. You just outlaw robocalls, can't you? You could. I mean, that wouldn't be hard. But instead, they're using this as a means to force your ID into everything so that they can track you and trace you every single place you go. They want the government. They want to obtain supporting records and copies of these government issued IDs. They want to make sure that these high volume customers have all sorts of records and stuff that are issued in there, and so they can track the corporations as well, and who owns the corporations. And they want to use all sorts of other things like cross-checking, third-party identification, verification services. They want to nail down to verify legally the ID of everyone that's using the phone in any way, shape, or form. They're also wanting to require that these providers occasionally and periodically re-verify the customer information, right? This is really important. I'm looking over here at my notes because I've got a lot on this. What this does is this means it's not good enough for them to just get your real ID and assume that you've got it. The company's got to continue to re-verify, make sure it's still you. That way they've got current records that they can use in a courtroom if they want to come after you for whatever they might want to come after you for. They've got additional things. They've got red flags So if you're using like a PO box or something like that, lack of commercial presence, any of that, they want additional information, right? So there's no way to work around this. They don't want any holding companies or untraceable companies to have access to these phones or phone capacity unless they can track and trace every part of it, right? So what this does is this doesn't specifically say that you have to have real ID, but essentially you have to have real ID. That's basically the rule. The rule says, well, you don't have to have real ID, except for you do. It's got to be a government verified identification, et cetera, et cetera. And they're making it so that to have a government verified identification, you have to essentially participate in the real ID system. This is an absolute attack on personal privacy, right? For individuals, you got to provide a name and a physical address, not a PO box, right? They want government issued ID number, which real ID, and alternate phone numbers. And you got to submit a copy of the government issued ID for verification. So when you go get your cell phone, they're going to ask for a copy of your driver's license, right? And all sorts of other stuff. They're going to basically lock down so that this is going on and on and on so that they can track and trace everything you're doing. This is the next step. And this is the same thing they're doing with the porn stuff, right? Obviously, no one wants their kids to get porn. So these states are passing these laws that you can't get online and you can't look at porn or you can't do this, you can't do that unless you provide identity verification to get online. And they say that it's so they can show that you're over 18 if you're accessing these porn sites. But the reality is it's all about pushing this track and trace ID thing, the digital prison. Track and trace is foundational to creating this digital prison. This is a terrifying thing, and nobody wants it. It's universal. I've talked to Democrats, I've talked to Republicans, I've talked to everybody. Nobody wants the government to track and trace everything they're doing, but yet that's what they're doing. They keep pushing this out. They keep pushing this stuff, and it's going the wrong direction, guys. Now, you might say, well, this is just, this is robocalls. It's kind of it's a random thing. There's not that many things. But let me talk about this, right? Dodge This Security posted this post, and let me talk about. They say anyone who can't see what's happening is blind. Banning of the ability to have privacy with a cell phone. They're doing that. Banning of the ability to own a foreign router. Right, so they're working on that, trying to make sure that all the routers meet certain compliance standards, so that they can track and trace what you're doing from your home network or any other network. They want identity checks on the operating system, app store, and service provider levels. Right, this is part of this law, these laws that we're seeing passed all over the place to make sure that anywhere you want to go on the internet, anything you do, you have to have proven your ID. They want the ability to restrict individuals to access the internet to given types of content. That's absolutely certain. This is really a censorship regime in wolf in sheep's clothing, guys. It really is. They're going to, hey, you can look at this, but you can't look at that. You got to be this age to look at this. You got to be this age to look at that. This is an egregious attack on the First Amendment. Again, porn's obviously widely disfavored especially amongst the GOP, and no one wants their kids looking at porn, but they're using it as a false flag. They're using it to force identification and track and trace. It's all about the track and trace. They're forcing front and center official news media into these online services. They want to control the AI algorithms. There's just been new executive orders with rules to be issued on that. They want control over the visibility and sharing of content. They want control over people's cars, the remote kill switch, biometrics, automated reporting, the inebriation checks, all these sorts of things. We just saw the kill switch law that was passed here. We see forced biometrics to log into computers, phones, etc. Digital ID to replace physical ID. That's very true. The Real ID Act, which was originally passed under Bush and which Trump updated by passing the Real ID Modernization Act, and then Trump implemented. So this isn't just Democrats. This is Republicans too, including our beloved MAGA people, right? We all love MAGA. We want MAGA, but not this. This is not MAGA. Track and trace is not MAGA. So we're doing that. We're the push for digital cash, right? Everybody's pushing for crypto and digital this, digital that, except for we passed with the Genius Act. We applied BSA and AML laws, which are Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering laws, track and trace reporting to the federal government. What that means is that whatever sorts of transactions that you're doing with your crypto, the government can still track it and trace it just like they could anything else. They want to be able to do that. Now, if you think that won't result in your money being turned on and off, the CBDC type situation, I got news for you. You don't pass all these laws unless you intend to use it. We're seeing biometrics and license plate cameras, the flock cameras everywhere. We're seeing banning mobile apps that the government's saying are just, they're no good because we can't track it, we can't trace it. It's doing this, it's doing that. They're pushing the wrong stuff, dangerous, false, or incorrect information. The internet was supposed to be free flowing information. There was never a promise that it was going to be correct. There was never a promise that there wouldn't be fake news. And you know what? If someone wants to put that, buyer beware. Now, I'm okay with banning foreign governments from pushing propaganda in our country, but I'd like to ban our country from pushing propaganda in our country. There should be no propaganda from any government actors. We should have free flow of information. That's the First Amendment, right? But the First Amendment has been sidelined on the internet. How? Well, the internet is essentially private companies. And we saw this during COVID, right? Facebook censored all sorts of things. All of them did. Twitter did under Jack Dorsey. Thankfully, Elon Musk fixed some of that. All the big platforms censored the hell out of you, and some of them still do. YouTube and TikTok will still censor the hell out of you. Facebook, X, they're limiting freedom of reach. Although I'll be honest, I'm getting better reach on Facebook and Instagram than I am on X right now. I'm grateful for what Elon Musk has done, but his freedom of reach over freedom of speech thing is really stifling. It's stifling. I'm hoping Elon will get that fixed up because he seems to be a legitimate, fan of free speech, but we're just not there right now. And the government's pushing against it, right? We've got AI being embedded in processors, mobile devices, desktop OS, et cetera, and the AI can monitor everything. And here's the thing. AI is not properly regulated. So AI shares information, does different things, and everybody says, well, I don't know how I got it. AI just got this. AI just figured it out, right? Everybody tries to act like, but AI is able to get a lot of things that you probably shouldn't have access to by going through these public lists and analyzing different things in ways that it can triangulate data. It's a very complex process, but they've really mastered being able to dig out every piece of information about you through the use of AI and publicly available data, including the metadata, right? So what's happened is metadata is supposed to be anonymized, and all these phone companies, all these different people collect this metadata. Well, metadata is generally anonymized, but with a very high-end AI system, which the government's built, it can analyze the metadata, triangulate, and really figure out anything it wants to about you, from your location to what you're saying, to what you're doing, to what you think. I can tell you that I have access to certain tools as an attorney and as someone who does a lot of investigating that really profoundly violate all sorts of privacy protections, in my opinion. Some of the data, what I can find on an individual is terrifying. Just using publicly available services, right? And if you're a private investigator or some sort of law enforcement, what you can find is about 1 million times worse. Okay, so this is really a concerning thing. We're seeing laws demanding backdoor encryption, right? They say that this is to prevent terrorism, but it prevents us from having actual privacy. By the way, folks, you all think Signal is encrypted and private. Signal is not something, it can be hacked. I assure you, Signal can be hacked. The data that you have, Signal, it is hackable. The government can get to it if they choose to. Now, they don't want to admit that, because if they did, no one would know how to, everybody would quit using Signal. Right now, Signal is a very valuable tool because people use it and they think, oh, I'm safe, it's on Signal, nobody can track it, except for they can. They're not going to admit it, because if everybody knew that, they'd quit using Signal. But there are requirements for backdoors into any encryption out there. So even the encryption on Signal, your data can be hacked. It can be broken into by the government if they really want to. And remember, with the FISA courts and some of these other courts and some of these different things that they're doing, they can issue orders to get into things and you don't even know what's happening. So we don't even know how bad it really is. A lot of laws demanding client-side scanning, laws demanding control over speech deemed harmful, violent, or dangerous. There's a big push on that. We heard Pam Bondi in all her glory telling us that hate speech is not protected, except for one thing. The Supreme Court has openly said, yes, hate speech is protected. It may be awful. Nobody likes hate speech, including me. But the right to say what you want is fundamental. I don't care if you're a Democrat spewing hate, if you're a leftist spewing hate, if you're a nutbag spewing hate. I may not like it, but you do have the right under the First Amendment to say what you think. And you know what? If I don't like what someone thinks, well, I can either stay away from them or whatever. And frankly, a lot of that stuff, for example, if you were working for me and you started spewing a bunch of hate speech, well, I can fire you. And that's perfectly fine, but you still have the legal right to say it. The government is trying to change that. Charges and convictions against anyone releasing privacy-focused software. We see AI predictive policing and predictive dissent detection. That's coming. They're centralizing all of our healthcare, psych info, financial info, online, offline, travel, government records. All this is being pushed in there, and they're forcing biometric collection through Real ID and through some of these other things to ensure that they can track your travel. Now, you may say, well, wait a second. I can go to the airport and I can opt out, right? That little camera thing, I go to the airport. I travel all the time. I have to travel so much for my work. And every time you go to the airport, you walk in there, there's a million cameras everywhere. You go up to the security line and they say, here, let me take your picture. And you can say, I want to opt out. And TSA is extremely polite about it. God bless the TSA guys. They do a really good job. They don't harass you. They don't hassle you. Say, okay, no problem. And that's that. But then you hand them your Real ID. Well, one of the requirements for Real ID is that it's got your biometric data. So it doesn't matter. They may not take your picture right there, but they've got your Real ID, so it doesn't matter. This is happening everywhere, right? And it's becoming worse and worse. I've talked extensively about Real ID, right? Extensively. And I still have pinned to my profile, to the top of my Twitter link, the post that I did right here, where I talk about this Real ID and what it is, right? Now, Bill Gates loves this, so I put his picture on it. But if you look at this, I lay out legally how the Real ID Act works. And if you haven't read it, I want to urge you to take a look, because it's crucial that we understand what's happening. Real ID is track and trace. It is absolutely 100% the foundation of track and trace, because legally they have to have some sort of a tie, right? You got to prove someone's identity to go after them for whatever you want to go after them for. And basically, we have so many laws right now that if the government wants to go after you for something, they can find a way to do it. If the DOJ, with all the power and resources it has, wants to go after you, they can find something to do it on. They can, whether it's a good charge or a bad charge. We saw that during the Biden administration when they called moms and dads who went to school boards domestic terrorists and then put them on lists. We saw it when people who were innocent, didn't do anything at J6 but physically attended, were put on lists and couldn't travel without basically a full rectal exam. The Real ID Act and the Real ID Modernization Act put all these different standards in place, right? And they require data retention. They have implementing regulations. They have all these sorts of things. But one of the things that's really interesting about this is this state-to-state sharing mechanism, right? This is phenomenally important, and I lay in there. The State Pointer Exchange Services, SPEXS, extends the platform for commercial driver's license, right? And this is done through this public-private partnership. There is a nonprofit that's in charge of collecting and sharing all real ID data across states. The federal government gets to pretend that it's not a federal database, but the reality is they have full access to it. They're going to be able to do whatever they want with it. They did it this way because by doing it with a private entity, it allows them to circumvent the Fourth Amendment in many, many cases. This private entity is getting all this data and they can share the metadata. And as I said, they can triangulate using the metadata to figure out what you're doing. This keeps going on. And there are requirements for biometric data. And as you can see here, I talk about that the data can be resold by recipients. And I showed the rule, right? They can resell your data. That's the workaround, right? You got all these privacy loopholes, and it's really a disaster. And it's tied to your biometric data, as you can see by the Real ID Modernization Act. Our privacy is not just under attack, it is being destroyed. And I know I've covered a lot of stuff here in a very short period of time, but it's profound how many things are happening to eliminate our privacy. And it's legal action, legal action, legal action. It's regulation, it's rule. Our government can't get anything done right now, right? We can't get the SAVE Act passed, which, by the way, would require your digital ID. But we can't get the SAVE Act passed. 90% of Americans, bipartisan 90%, believe that Big Pharma has too much power. We can't get anything done about that. And that's according to Trump's own polling. But we do seem to be able to continually pass anything and everything that limits our privacy and will ultimately limit our ability to have free speech. When the next COVID hits, we're going to get shut down. And those of us that speak out will end up in FEMA camps. This is going to happen, folks. Now, do I think Donald Trump would do that? No. But do you think Donald Trump is going to be there forever? Absolutely not. So what happens when we have Joe Biden with all these expansive powers to track and trace everything you do and to drum up charges against his political enemies? What happens then? What happens is that we're all screwed. Our privacy is not and should not be for sale, but the government has worked around it by working with public-private partnerships to essentially be able to buy and triangulate all the data. And with the new AI systems, they can take that metadata, they can decipher who's part of what, and they can track and trace everything you're doing with no warrant and no need to do anything more. And they can do so with great, great, great certainty. From there, they can find reasons and an ability to get probable cause on anyone that's a political enemy. Mark my words, folks, what you're seeing right now is the infrastructure for the digital prison being built out one step at a time. It's terrifying, and it's getting worse. And every single time our government puts something out that requires identification to access the internet, they are moving closer and closer to being able to regulate your ability to participate in commerce. All commerce is being done through the internet, all of it. If you have a credit card right now, if you have a debit card, if you have anything, and you go to the store and you swipe that card, it is tracked. It's tied to you. It's tied to your ID. It's tied to everything else, and it's tracked and traced 100%. As we move towards true digital money, because right now our money is transferred digitally, right? Everything's digital on the back end. The only thing that's not digital is that we're still using the dollar. As we move to a true crypto-based currency system, our privacy is dead. It's gone. I cannot tell you how bad things really are on that front. And yet nobody is talking about it. Nobody seems to realize or care. And the reason is that because as the government's building this out, they're being very careful not to use it. They're not using it in any sort of a way where anybody's going to notice. And they keep doing these things, this news story, that's news story. We have all these different things to distract us. But as we're being distracted, our privacy is gone. This is a core MAHA issue because thanks to Obamacare, all of our health, including our psychiatric data, is digital. We have the requirements for the electronic medical records. That means that whatever you say, you think, you feel, you go to your doctor, it's in the EMRs. This means that your privacy is truly gone, even down to your medical records, and could very easily lead to predictive policing, right? Oh, you talked to your psychologist about this. We need to keep you on a watch list because you might be a threat. You think this can't happen, folks? Well, do you remember when you thought that the country couldn't be shut down and people be forced to wear masks? Do you remember when you couldn't even imagine an election being stolen as it was in 2020, or people being persecuted for speaking out against it like J6? We're living in the Great Reset. It's happening. And no one is even noticing it because we're too busy worried about nonsense that, frankly, is much less of a threat than this. Do you think that when we move to universal basic income, because jobs are lost, because AI can manage things, robots are doing the job, do you think that when that happens, some dictator tyrant wannabe like Joe Biden wouldn't turn your money off if you tried to buy too many bullets? Wouldn't turn your money off if you were speaking out the wrong way? Of course they will. The CBDC nightmare is coming our way. It's happening. And nobody realizes it. The law is being created. The infrastructure is being created. And we are on the losing end of this. I urge you, I'm pleading with you, pay attention to this issue. Share, discuss, get it out there. We need everyone watching to help get this out there. We've got to get this out there. I want you to like and share my show. Of course I do. But even if you don't, I don't care. Just get the information out there and talk to people about it. Nobody that I've talked to, nobody, not one person, is okay with digital track and trace. Nobody wants universal surveillance. Democrat, Republican, otherwise. I had a conversation with a rabid leftist nutbag filmmaker. Nice enough person to talk to. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what we were talking about. And they were telling me about how terrible Republicans are, how terrible MAGA is, et cetera, et cetera. And so I brought up surveillance. I said, how do you feel about universal track and trace? How do you feel about the government being able to listen to everything you're saying, track and trace, this and that? And this person said, well, that's horrible. I don't want that. I said, well, you understand that both parties are pushing it, right? And they had no idea. They had no idea about this stuff. People don't realize that this is happening, but it absolutely is. The digital prison is being erected around us, and no one gets it. So we've got to make sure that we're doing whatever we can on this. We're going to have to fight back. And I'm very concerned, though, because our ability to fight back is going to be very limited by the stifling of free speech, which is only increasing. I mean, right now, it's nothing but a click of a switch for these big social media companies and big Google and all these others, and they can make you impossible to find. You can say whatever you want, but they can make you impossible to find. They can essentially censor you out of existence, but there's nothing you can do about it. We've tested this. Facebook's been sued. Everybody's been sued. And basically, the government, the courts have said that, listen, Facebook, whoever, it's their platform. They don't have to publish something they don't want. And they can handle the publications however they want. It's completely legal for them to do it. So the government is going to regulate free speech by tracking the data, and then telling the platforms, hey, it'd be a shame if you talk about this or you let people talk about this, because we'd have to investigate you, and you might not be eligible for some of the government funding that props you up. Do you think these big platforms wouldn't react to that? Of course they would. Of course they would. This is the same control mechanism that China has built. We're just doing it in a different way. We are going the wrong way on this, folks. I don't know that Donald Trump understands what's happening because it's being done very, very nefariously. They're doing it in a very sneaky way. It's all under the radar. Oh, we need the golden age, Mr. President. We can do that if we get rid of crime. Here's how we do it. I don't know. I don't know if that's what's happening behind the scenes or not. But what I do know is that this universal digital track and trace is in place. So I want to hit a couple other things. Mike Lindell. So Mike is a good guy. I've talked to him. I know him reasonably well. We've certainly chatted a fair bit, and we spent some time together doing some different things. I talked with him and worked with him on some election stuff. Didn't file any suits on it because I just didn't think that there was enough oomph to get over the finish line. I didn't feel like we could do it properly, which it's not that the cases couldn't be done properly. It's that the courts won't let them occur. Right. There's been some good cases that should have gone through, but haven't. So Dominion has been suing Lindell for defamation it's been, I think, 5-6 years now. And the case was eventually dismissed, finally. And I think Lindell just announced this today. And good for Mike. I mean, Mike has been through hell. He was legitimately trying to fix election stuff. Whether or not you agree with everything he did or how he did it, I don't care. I appreciate the fact that he fought, and he did, and he suffered. He spent an immense amount of money. And I mean, it's basically, he spent himself into poverty on a lot of this between the amount of money he spent and the persecution that he's faced from, over and over again, trying to speak out and do the right thing. It's been ridiculous. So I like Mike Lindell, and it's bad. So anyways, Dominion was actually bought by a Republican and has now been renamed Liberty Vote. Now, y'all have heard me say, guess what? The Republicans use election fraud too. I stand by that 100%. That's why do you think we have so many rhinos when everybody's in favor of MAGA? How do you think guys like John Thune keep winning? How do you think Mitch McConnell stays in power? Nobody likes Mitch McConnell. When I go to Kentucky and I talk about Mitch McConnell, everybody boos. Nobody likes the guy, right? But yet, that's what we have over and over again is Mitch McConnell winning. Mitch McConnell knew that he was getting too old to do the job, so he handpicked John Thune to be Senate Majority Leader, and we get all the crap that we've been getting, right? So that's happening over and over again. And now you've got a Republican group that's running it, and frankly, I don't trust them either because they're still keeping the source code and all these other things secret. I'm sorry, but it should be very transparent and it should be very clear. You can't hack a machine that's not connected to the internet. Okay, you can't. So if these machines weren't connected to any wireless or internet, there'd be no issue. Just don't put this hardware in for them to connect. It's real simple. But they all can connect. Right? Indirectly or directly to the internet, which means they can all be manipulated one way or another. Backdoors, things like that, they can be hard to find, but it doesn't mean they're not there. Now, do I have proof that the machines have been manipulated? No, I don't. But why have they spent so many years fighting to make sure that none of the machines can be examined? I mean, it's historic. Everybody knows how hard they fought to make sure we couldn't examine the machines from 2020. They erased them, they modified them, they hid them, whatever they could do. The only person that successfully did anything on it was Tina Peters, and she spent years in jail over it. But the interesting thing about the Dominion lawsuit against Lindell is it was dismissed. Now, Lindell said that, he when he started this case, he said he was excited about it because he was going to get discovery. And let me explain how that works. So when you, to show defamation in a public case like this, you have to show malice, right? It has to show actual malice. So what they have to show is that Lindell knew or should have known. And despite knowing, he still chose to make a defamatory statement. You have to prove that he knew it was false, and he still said it anyways, right? So truth is a complete defense in the courts for defamation. If you're telling the truth, it doesn't matter. It's not defamation. So the central issue here is, were the machines hacked? Were they manipulated? Was there anything going on? Because that's been Lindell's point from the beginning. Do you know that in all these suits, not once has anybody been given full discovery on the source code, the machines, and all these different things? Not once. This is a legal travesty, to my opinion, right? We've seen a bunch of people get sued for comments over the machines, but yet not once has anybody been able to get to the discovery on the central issue. The closest thing we got was the Fox News case, which frankly didn't do it. It didn't do it right. So for some reason, they keep hiding this. And then, they're still allowing convictions on this. It's mind-blowing. Now, it's a win for Lindell that the case went away. But the claim is, if you look at the commentators, the people on the right say it was a win. The people on the left say, yeah, not so much. It's just because the Republicans bought the company and dropped the case. I think the latter is true. The Republicans did buy the company and they did drop the case, but they still didn't allow discovery. Now, let me ask you this. If a Republican company bought this, why wouldn't that Republican company try very hard to ensure full transparency? Why wouldn't they make sure that these machines were built so that they could be transparent and still make them unhackable? Why? There's no reason for it. Now, maybe, you can't share all the security and some of the source code, but there's certain protections and precautions. And certainly they could make the data and the security and what they did from 2020 available. They could make some of the machines, they could make the records from 2020 available, but they won't. They still fought discovery. Nobody wanted discovery. So the case was dismissed. Everybody says, that this was a great thing. But at the end of the day, we've still had no justice for 2020. We still have not had proper discovery or proper accounting of what's happened. I mean, God bless Javon Pulitzer, Doug Frank, and all these guys that have done, Seth Cash, all these guys that have done endless work on this, right? And Mike Lindell, right? I don't care who was right or who was wrong. I appreciate that they all worked on this and fought on this. The thing is from a legal standpoint, this should never have been an issue. Those machines should have immediately been evaluated. The relevant standards of law, in my opinion, were met. And these courts were egregiously wrong in not allowing proper discovery on this, in my opinion. There's just no good justification for it. It was not just, lawyers would like to say it's peculiar, right? I think it was corrupt. I don't know how else to explain it. I do not understand how it is that you can have the central issue of a case not discoverable. How can you not allow full discovery on a central issue of a case? 5 years later, 6 years later, Lindell still couldn't get full discovery in what he wanted on this case, even though a Republican company bought it. That tells me that they still plan on using the same sort of cheating. They just don't want anybody to know it. I mean, we renamed it Liberty Vote, right? So who's going to think that they're cheating? It's Liberty Vote, Republican owned. Well, I still don't trust it. I don't trust the uniparty. I mean, Mitch McConnell's a Republican. Are you okay with him? How about John Thune? He's a Republican. Are we okay with him? Being owned by Republicans does not make it honest, as we've seen from some of the rhinos in our party. So this is very, very concerning and continues to go on. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Democrats' continued wins, but I don't really have time. So I'm going to just jump real quick. Headline: Trump berates Senate Republicans over Iran war vote after calling off bill signing. So Trump was going to sign this bill on a housing bill, and he canceled it because he said, you still haven't given me the SAVE Act, which, okay, good. Now, Trump was supposed to be going in to meet with the Republicans, and everybody was expecting him to jump up and down over the SAVE Act. But according to this report, and it's the AP, so I don't fully trust it, they still want to do hit pieces for the sake of hit pieces. But according to the AP, what Trump really had a conniption over was the Republicans voting to block his war in Iran. And they did. Senate and the House have both voted to block his war in Iran. So I think that's going to come to an end one way or another. We'll see. I mean, the war is very unpopular, and it's unpopular on both sides. And the Republicans know that this is disastrous for the election. So, but it ends up apparently, according to these sources and according to the AP, which again I don't know that I trust AP, is that this was just a screaming match over the war in Iran. Apparently, Trump really singled out Murkowski, Collins, Rand Paul, and Bill Cassidy because they don't like the war. Now, Cassidy, Murkowski, and Collins, I can certainly get behind calling them losers and ripping on them, but I don't know so much that I would include Rand Paul in that. He's just kind of a principled guy that doesn't want to be in the war stuff. I mean, he leans libertarian. He's not a perfect senator, but he generally does an okay job. But apparently Trump was really pissed about this. So most Republicans, according to the source, stayed quiet, but Cassidy did not. Now, Cassidy lost his election primary, which, thank God, this guy was a pharma sellout piece of crap. I'm so glad that we're done with Cassidy. He just needed to go in the worst kind of way. But Cassidy apparently stood up and argued with the president and just basically told him to go to hell. And said that, since they're not even giving the Republicans briefings, they're not going to vote for war powers. So this turned into a big fight over the Iran war, which I think is a really interesting thing, right? With all the things we've got going on in this country, we just talked about privacy. We talked about all these different things. This fight really comes down to who's fussing over what with regards to the Iran war. Honestly, guys, this is not the kind of thing that the Iran war. I thought we were done with it. I thought it was over. What's the harm in them? Yeah, I mean, I thought we had the MOU and we were going to be done. What's the harm in them voting to end something that was unpopular? But apparently it was that. This also, Trump did reverse course on the housing bill, which also is upsetting people in the Senate. The senators, and this is crazy to me. Despite 80% of America wanting voter ID to make sure that we don't have, stolen elections, the Republicans will not pass it. And amongst Republicans, I mean, passing voter ID and election reform is a top priority. Yet the Republicans in the Senate will not pass it. Now, we've been told, rumor has it, and I believe this, that some of these arrogant jerks that are in the Senate won't do it just because they don't like Donald Trump. But this is the problem in Washington, right? To hell with what the people want, to hell with everything. My feelings are hurt. I don't like Donald Trump, so I'm going to vote against the American people. Every one of these Republicans should be primaried, but yet we aren't doing anything with it, right? We're endorsing Lindsey Graham. And the president's barely attacking John Thune. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is continued on and on, and the Republicans want him to sign this housing bill. They need a win, and Trump's just telling them to go to hell. Attach the SAVE Act. I'm kind of glad that Trump's doing that. I have mixed feelings. I want the SAVE Act to be passed because we've got to do something for elections, but I also really hate the fact that this is just another part of the digital prison. There's a lot of ways that they could fix elections without using digital ID, but we can't get anywhere to do it. And John Thune absolutely refuses to nuke the filibuster, which the Democrats have done over and over again and would do it again in a heartbeat. This is corruption on every single level. This whole meeting, from the sounds of it, was an absolute mess. A lot of Republicans were saying, we don't understand. The Republicans actually said, why would Trump hold up the housing bill for the Real ID Act for the SAVE Act when it won't pass in this Congress? Well, my question is, why the hell won't it pass in this Congress? The base wants it. And whether I like every part of the SAVE Act or not, the base wants it, a huge portion of them. Why is it that the Republicans hate their base? One of the foundational problems we're going to have going into midterms is that the Republicans hate their base. That's why the socialists keep winning. That's why Mandani keeps winning. Between the Republicans hating their base and the widespread disdain for this Iran war nonsense, we're getting nowhere. This is a debacle, guys. We have no representation anywhere. Nobody actually cares about the Constitution. Nobody cares about freedom. Our elected officials, I mean, they're gone. We've lost it. We're going to have to really fight back, guys. We're going to have to unify. We're going to have to come together and recognize that there's problems, and we're going to have to start pushing for solutions just like we did during COVID. It's the only way that we move forward as a nation, because Washington isn't just dysfunctional. It's completely broken right now. And really, the core thing that we need to do is we need to cut back and limit the global nobility class, the global elites. That's the key solution. All right, lots more to talk about. I'm going to try and get into some more of this stuff. Hopefully tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. But I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you listening. Please like, share, comment, get involved, get the information out, and continue to stick with us here in the Tom Renz Show. We'll keep pushing truth. Thank you for your support. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. We will be back very soon.
Hale & Associates are a financial services organization specializing in retirement planning. We work with individuals from across the country, understanding that each person has unique needs and desires. Our goal is to help you develop income planning solutions that last a lifetime while securing your estate in a tax-efficient manner. Since 1983, Hale & Associates has been committed to educating the public on effective retirement planning strategies. We strive to empower our clients to make informed decisions to achieve their financial goals and secure their future. Let us help you take the necessary steps to build a retirement plan that meets your needs and provides financial peace of mind.